Hello BookTube, I'm Jonathan, and today we are going to be diving into some low lives and high tech as I crank up the neon lights and share my top 10 cyberpunk books of all time. And here are two things to know. The first is that this list is based purely on my own personal enjoyment, so feel free to share your list in the comments. And secondly, seeing as cyberpunk can often feature a lot of terminology and complex world building, I'm going to be grading each of these books, based on my experience, on a scale from accessible to challenging, in order to help you decide what to pick up next based on the type of reading experience that you're in the mood for. So let's get started with number 10, When Gravity Fails by George Alec Effinger. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked awful, but I always looked awful in the mirror. I keep myself going with the firm belief that my real face is much better looking. When Gravity Fails follows the freelance investigator Merid Ordrin, as he takes on operations in a Middle Eastern district, the Budayin, known for its drugs, crime, and cybernetic modifications. The book features an interesting noir storyline, as well as an intriguing cast of characters. And some of my favorite tech in the book included the daddies and moddies, which provide users with additional skills or entirely different personalities. I also really liked the Middle Eastern setting and thought it integrated the local customs, religion, and philosophy with the cyberpunk technology in an interesting and effective way. I found When Gravity Fails to be very readable, and I think it would be a great introduction to cyberpunk. Number 9, Synners by Pat Cadigan. Because if you didn't speak your truth, there was always something that would speak it for you, that much louder. In this book, sinners are people that can synthesize the images from the brains of performers and turn them into a form which can be repackaged and sold. They blur the lines between technology and humanity. Pat Cadigan is sometimes referred to as the Queen of Cyberpunk, and for good reason. This book expertly examines the relationships between media, technology, and economics. It also explores the implications of technology for both individuals and society. Synners is a unique reading experience. It has a trippy feel to it as the prose slips in and out of reality and virtual reality. It also doesn't feature a lot of sex and violence, so this could be a good book for you to try if that's something that's put you off from other cyberpunk books. I found Synners to be a slightly challenging read, as it could be a little confusing at times. But it doesn't rely too heavily on technobabble, and I felt like all the threads came together in the end. Number 8, Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson. When you are wrestling for possession of a sword, the man with the handle always wins. In Snow Crash, our main character, hero protagonist, is a pizza delivery driver. But in the metaverse, he's a warrior prince attempting to unravel the mystery of a new computer virus. Snow Crash is in some ways a cyberpunk parody, as it provides a comedic take on a number of cyberpunk tropes. However, it also provides a serious look into the future of computing and integrates this with some historical and religious themes. The storytelling relies on exposition at times, but I found the technological concepts fascinating, and I also enjoyed the witty dialogue and interesting character arcs. I found Snow Crash to be a fun, fast read. It does include some technical jargon and info dumps, which might not be to everybody's taste, but I enjoyed them. Number 7, Software by Rudy Rucker. I think you should kill him and eat his brain, Mr. Frosty said quickly. That's not the answer to every problem in interpersonal relations, Cobb said, hopping out. In Software, the main character, Cobb Anderson, created sentient robots known as boppers. And now one of these boppers wants to provide Cobb with immortality by slicing up his brain and taping his software. This is an irreverent and very funny book, but also an insightful look into the nature of consciousness and what it means to be human. I also really enjoyed the storyline with the little boppers revolting against the big boppers. This book predates the coinage of the term cyberpunk, but features a lot of the hallmarks, including the cybernetics, drugs, and scumbag characters. The other protagonist, known as Stay High, can be rather entertaining if you can put up with how offensive and unlikable he can be. Software is a short, easy read, and potentially another good entry point to the genre. Number 6, 36 Streets by T.R. Napa. Oceans of people passed, in the spaces between the neon and the streetlight, towers of steel and glass, lighted windows, a universe in each one. People living their lives side by side, yet so far from each other. The main character Lin Vu is an outsider, but she has carved a place for herself in the underworld of the 36 Streets in Hanoi, where its residents have become addicted to an immersive simulation of the US-Vietnam War. 36 Streets hits the classic cyberpunk beats of drugs, crime, and virtual reality, but it infuses this with Vietnamese culture and martial arts-driven action. I found the themes revolving around identity and memory to be emotionally impactful, and I like the focus on relationships to family and country. I also thought the simulation scenes were incredibly well written, and I wanted even more of them. I think this is an accessible cyberpunk read, particularly for character-driven readers. And just before we get to the top 5, today's video is sponsored by no one. The channel is proud to partner with no one, because almost every sponsorship offer I receive is something I wouldn't use, and you wouldn't either, so I don't take the money. Give a thumbs up for today's sponsor, no one. Number 5, Neuromancer by William Gibson. When the past is always with you, it may as well be present. And if it is present, it will be future as well. Now obviously, if this list was ranked by acclaim, influence, and importance to the genre, Neuromancer would be number 1. But this list is just based on my own enjoyment, and I enjoyed Neuromancer. Top 5 is pretty good. So what is the premise for Neuromancer? Well, the main character Case used to be a data thief before he crossed the wrong people, and they crippled his nervous system, banishing him from cyberspace. That is, until a shadowy employer offers Case a cure in return for taking on a job alongside a street samurai named Molly in order to take on a powerful artificial intelligence. I first read Neuromancer about 7 years ago, and it went a little over my head. I liked it, but it was a book that I respected and appreciated more than I understood and enjoyed. So since then, I have read quite a lot of sci-fi books, and in preparation for this video, I decided to do a reread of Neuromancer. Did I understand more this time around? Yes. Did I understand everything? No. And that's okay. Neuromancer is an intentionally disorienting reading experience, and that reflects the challenges of navigating the Matrix. Something I appreciated a lot more the second time around was the prose. Gibson's writing reads like psychedelic free jazz. I might not be picking up every note, but it creates an unforgettable vibe and atmosphere. Neuromancer is a genre-defining book. A challenging but rewarding one. Number 4, Altered Carbon by Richard K. Morgan. The human eye is a wonderful device. With a little effort, it can fail to see even the most glaring injustice. In Altered Carbon, Takeshi Kovacs is a convict who is downloaded into a new body and contracted by a billionaire to solve the murder of the billionaire's previous body. This book won't be for everyone due to the graphic nature of the sex and violence. Personally, I thought the vivid and visceral descriptions force you to acknowledge the realities and consequences of a person's decision to use violence. This is a great detective story packed full of political twists and turns. Morgan also weaves philosophy into the storyline with plenty of thought-provoking ideas. I also really enjoyed the technology, including the memory stacks and sleeve bodies. There is some jargon, but it's explained quickly and simply. If you don't mind the graphic content, Altered Carbon is an accessible read. Number 3, Hardwired by Walter John Williams. It is no longer enough to be the best. Somehow as well, it matters to be wise, to know on whose behalf he wields the sword. Hardwired follows Cowboy, an ex-pilot hardwired into his lethal electronic hardware, as well as Sarah, another modified gun for hire, in their struggle for independence against the Orbitals. The covers for this book look like an 80s arcade game, and you might assume it's a bit pulpy, but it combines high-octane action alongside interesting character development and masterful prose. It took me a few chapters to get my bearings, but once I did, I became invested in the characters and relationships and absolutely despised one of the villains. It's a super cool world that features a lot of my favorite cyberpunk elements, as well as including some locations and sequences that reminded me of Mad Max. Hardwired might be a little tricky to get into, but once it establishes the world, I feel like it's relatively straightforward to follow. Number 2, Vurt by Jeff Noon. There is a room in England somewhere, but it's nowhere to be seen. It exists only in the mind, and only in the mind of those that have been there. Vurt tells the story of Scribble and his gang searching for one of their missing members. It takes place in a future world where sucking on color-coded Vurt feathers gives users access to a hallucinogenic alternate reality. Vurt is possibly the weirdest, most disturbing, bizarre, creative, and brilliant book I have ever read. The content in this one is extreme, but it's ambitious and pushes the limits of human imagination. I experienced every emotion possible while reading this book, and while not everything worked perfectly, it held my full attention as it went hurtling down a kaleidoscopic rabbit hole. Vurt uses a lot of slang and it's pretty trippy, but I don't think the core story is tough to follow, and it's one you won't forget. And just before we get to number 1, there are a lot of great books that I considered for this list, including books such as Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which is arguably proto-cyberpunk, and The Quantum Thief, which is arguably post-cyberpunk. And I wanted to choose 10 books that I think best represent the genre. So if you're looking for even more recommendations, I'll pin my honorable mentions in the comments. And number 1, Permutation City by Greg Egan. Order my life, I'm nothing without you. Fragments of time, fragments of words, fragments of feelings. Make sense of me. Make me whole. Permutation City is about a man trying to create eternal life through virtual reality. The main character, Paul Durham, creates digital copies of himself and then sells the option to other people to copy themselves so that they can continue to live in a virtual afterlife. This is one of my all-time favorite books. It's a page-turning story with brilliantly flawed characters and mind-blowing ideas. I don't think any book has dropped my jaw and scrambled my brain as much as Permutation City did. This is hard science fiction, and I didn't understand all the physics, biology, and computer science. But the cool thing is, the book was so interesting, it made me want to understand it. Never have I spent so much time researching concepts as after finishing Permutation City. The focus on the science won't be for everyone, but if you give it a try, I think it offers one of the most rewarding reading experiences in all of science fiction. So there you go, those are my top 10 cyberpunk books. Let me know your favorites in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, smash or just gently click the subscribe button. And if you really enjoyed it, consider checking out the perks of becoming a Patreon member, where you can become one of my robots, androids, or cyborgs, like Nima and New Eden, Half-Ogre, Zakawe, Samil, and the cybernetic Colin. And you can find more sci-fi content over here.